If you try to please everyone, you're going to end up getting hated by everyone. Trying to get everyone to like you is the biggest recipe for basically getting hated on by everybody. The person who has embodied this the most easily is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Hollywood's biggest weapon, and also now Hollywood's biggest fraud. For a long time, Dwayne has had Hollywood grabbed by the balls with his giant excessive run in the box office, getting in nearly $14 billion with his movies. There was a point where Dwayne was basically undefeated in all fields of being a celebrity, but lately the mask has started to fade and people have been seeing completely through his inauthentic persona. And it's starting to reflect because he's been losing tens of million dollars in the box office, has lost hundreds of thousands of followers, and overall has just lost a lot of respect. Today we're going to be looking at how Dwayne Johnson became the biggest fraud in all of Hollywood. Now, it's no surprise that Dwayne initially became a wrestler, seeing that his dad was Rocky Johnson, a legend in the world of WWE. He was the first Georgia Black heavyweight champion and was the two-time NWA television champion. But his biggest accomplishment was when him and Tony Atlas were the first black wrestlers to win the tag team championship. And Rocky also married the daughter of the wrestling legend Peter Maivia. Together, they gave birth to their son, Dwayne. Now, being a wrestler was a very challenging career path for Rocky. He was on the road constantly and basically lived on beer, sliced cheese, and bologna. Because he was traveling 12 out of every 14 days, he basically barely even saw his own son. And Rocky was not exactly a good role model to Dwayne, as he basically cheated on his wife at almost every arena that he performed at. Dwayne actually witnessed this himself and would even call some of the women, yelling at them to stay away from his dad. One time he even stole the credit card of one of the mistresses and went on a $3,000 shopping spree, which initially sparked his habit to do a lot of stealing. But what made Dwayne and Rocky's relationship so much worse was when Rocky was accused of R-wording a 19-year-old woman from Tennessee. Now, Rocky claims that this was just a giant setup from his wrestling rivals to tarnish his career, and if that was true, well, it worked. The charges basically had him completely blacklisted from wrestling, and he had to retire not too long after that. The charges affected his life so badly that he started drinking excessively, consuming up to half a gallon of vodka a day, and this really strained the relationship between Dwayne and his dad. Now, with the combination of only seeing the bad sides of his dad when he rarely saw him, and with constantly moving to new schools in different countries, Dwayne had an extreme lack of guidance. And after his family was evicted from their apartment when he was only 14 years old, Dwayne turned to petty theft. He started a theft ring with a bunch of other teenagers in Hawaii, and together they would target tourists. They would steal expensive jewelry and high-end clothing and then sell it to tourists for a profit. This path continued, and Dwayne would often get arrested for fighting, theft, check fraud, and more. He said that by 17 years old, he was arrested 8 or 9 times. And unsurprisingly, his grades were complete dog shit, as Dwayne was not really that good of a student. No good grades, no career path, no nothing. But it was when his family moved for the last time to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania that his life changed completely.
I wanted to use the bathroom, but I didn't want to use the regular boys' bathroom because the boys' bathroom smelled like smoke and all the other fun stuff that boys' bathrooms smell like. So I'd go into the teacher's lounge and a teacher comes in. His name is Jody Swick. Tough guy. He says, "Hey, you can't be in here." I kind of pause, look over my shoulder. Okay, I'll leave when I'm done. And I continue to wash my hands. I slowly dry my hands and I walk by him and I kind of just looked at him. I walked by, he looked at me, didn't say a word, but he was fuming. I went home that night and I felt bad. I just felt bad. Very next day, I found him and I went to see him in his class and I said, I just want to apologize for how I acted yesterday and I'm sorry. And I stuck my hand out and he looked at my hand and looked at me, looked at my hand again. He shook my hand. I'll never forget that shake. He said, "I want you to do something for me." "Yes." "I want you to come out and play football for me." I said, "Okay." He said, "All right. Have your word?" "Yeah, sure. You got my word."
Dwayne would not really realize how important this moment was because playing football was the best thing to happen to him. Jody acted like a father figure and a mentor to Dwayne while he fell in love with the sport. Soon enough, he went from troubled teenager criminal to a respectful young man with the motivation and passion for life. This would start to spread to other aspects of his life because his grades would also start to improve as well. Dwayne would even take on other sports like track and field and wrestling and would also get into some pretty major tournaments. Considering that Dwayne was 6'5" and over 250 pounds, it is is not a shocker that he was pretty damn good at football. And within 2 years, Dwayne was getting shit tons of offers from good colleges. But out of all of them, he chose a full-time athletic sponsorship for the University of Miami, where he was picked to be a defensive tackle. Dwayne would not take this moment for granted, as he would show up every single day giving it his all. Even in the Miami area, Dwayne was actually extremely active. He was a very known public speaker in that area, as he would often try and guide other people to make the right decisions in life, sharing his own experiences. But even playing at Miami for 4 years, Dwayne was not really shining that hard in the spotlight. Dwayne was just simply not as good as some of the other players and often was overshadowed, one of them being Warren Sapp, who became a future NFL superstar and entered the Football Hall of Fame. And this mainly was because he suffered a shoulder injury during his time there and had to get multiple surgeries on his knee. By the time Dwayne graduated, barely any teams wanted him except for one, the Calgary Stampeders. He went from a defensive tackle to a linebacker, but was completely cut from the team only 2 months in the season. Going back home to Tampa, Dwayne went into a very depressive state, realizing that his future as an NFL star was not going to happen. He gave it everything he had, but he was chewed up and spit out, and all he had to show for it was $7 in his pocket. Now he only had one option: wrestling. Dwayne and his dad started rekindling their friendship by the time that Dwayne went to college. So when Dwayne was home, he felt comfortable asking his dad to train him. Initially, Rocky was hesitant because he knew the strain on his life that being a wrestler had, and he did not want the same thing for his son. But eventually, Rocky agreed on the sole condition that he would not go easy on him. Now, both Rocky and WWE producer Pat Patterson trained Dwayne constantly. This was very essential for Dwayne to get his foot in the door because he had the proper training and the proper connections to get into the industry. Now, Pat was able to get Dwayne into tryouts for the World Wrestling Foundation, where he very quickly signed a contract. Now, during Dwayne's time as a wrestler, he would undergo multiple phases. His first phase being when he entered WWF under the name Rocky Maivia, a combo of his dad's name and his grandfather's name. He was reluctant to take this name, but Vince McMahon convinced him to take it, as he thought it would be a pretty good look. The tribute to the wrestling legends would help really give the crowd some familiarity. Dwayne had barely any experience in the wrestling world, but was pushed heavily. He was given the nickname Blue Chipper and was introduced as the world's first third-generation wrestler. Kicking ass already from the get-go, but there was just one problem. The audience fucking hated him. Every match he got booed at relentlessly, and the crowd would literally shout, "Die, Rocky, die." The fans did not really like this clean-cut, happy-go-lucky, upbeat character that Dwayne was putting on, so he took a break for a couple months. It seemed like he was done for, but in reality, he was just getting started. Because it was in 1997 where he made a comeback, turned heel as The Rock, ditching his last stage name completely. This was an entirely different person. He was a cocky, arrogant villain who would lash back at the audience who booed him, insulted the fuck out of the other performers, and even would go at the interviewers. Rocky Maivia was a pretty nice guy, but The Rock had no filter and no patience for bullshit. Between his over-exaggerated movements, his loud energy, and his numerous catchphrases, this was a hit. Instantly became a superstar in the WWE. The audience actually started to take him seriously now, and he was one of the most beloved people in the wrestling world. Now, as we know, WWE is shamelessly fake and scripted. So with the success of this performance that he was putting on, Dwayne figured that he could transfer that to television and movies. So he did a few appearances on TV shows like That 70s Show, Star Trek Voyager, and even on SNL. He even got his very first role by playing the Scorpion King in the movie The Mummy Returns, where he got a fat offer for $5.5 million. You think he's big now? He was just that big at the time. He even got his own movie, The Scorpion King, where he was the lead this time, and that movie made over $180 million in the box office. But the wrestling fans did not like how Dwayne was tapping into movies like this. So when he made another return to the WWE, he was getting booed relentlessly off stage. Feeling discouraged, he took another break from wrestling to focus on his movie The Rundown, but this was a box office failure. Now with his wrestling career and with his movie career at risk, The Rock decided to take a giant risk. He was going to make another comeback to the WWE, but this time as Hollywood Rock. An even more cocky and even more bombastic version of the Rock persona, but this time with the ego of a Hollywood star. He went even harder with insulting the audience and the other performers, going so far as to include a segment called Rock Concerts, where he would start playing the guitar and insulting the audience through the form of song. The audience learned to love him all over again, and once again he was at the top of the WWE. But then then his contract ended. He was over 30 at this point and didn't really want to keep risking his body physically, so he decided to put all of it into acting again. He starred in some movies that did pretty well, like Walking Tall and Gridiron Gang, but these weren't exactly exceptional. His other movies like Doom and Southland Tales were complete failures. This whole serious and deep approach that Dwayne was trying to take to movie theaters just was not working. So just like how he changed characters in wrestling, he decided to change his actual real-life persona, and he went from The Rock to Dwayne Johnson. The Rock was an egotistical, muscular, aggressive piece of monstrosity, but Dwayne was a slimmed down, thin, nice, smiley, wholesome person with a lot of charm. And this was when he started to switch over to more family-friendly kid movies. He did his first ever Disney movie, The Game Plan, which brought in over $140 million with a $22 million budget. This was definitely the right move to go for Dwayne at the time, and he started doing a bunch more of these. Get Smart scored $230 million, Race to Witch Mountain $106 million, Planet 51 $105 million, Tooth Fairy $112 million. Dwayne was now making more money than he could have dreamed of. But this wasn't enough. Dwayne wasn't quite the movie star that he really wanted to be. Yeah, he was successful in all these kid films, but he wanted more than that. He didn't want to be successful in Hollywood, he wanted to be Hollywood. And he wasn't gonna do that with all of these silly Disney films that were pretty forgettable. No, no, no. So he fired all of his current agents, got a new team, and entered another new phase. This time as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. A combination of both Dwayne Johnson and The Rock. He would have the badass action attitude of The Rock, but still keeping the wholesome family charm of Dwayne Johnson. He then would take on the role that completely cemented his name in Hollywood as Luke Hobbs in the Fast and Furious franchise. To say that this movie did good or even great is such a severe understatement. It brought in $600 million, which was more than double what the last Fast and Furious movie did, and gave the series a completely new light. The franchise went from car culture street racing to one of the most action-packed movie franchises ever. Critics and fans raved in awe of Dwayne's performance and really gave him a lot of the credit for giving the series a new light. To this day, many critics and fans consider this movie to be the best out of the entire series. The success continued when Fast and Furious 6 dropped, which brought in over $800 million, and this was really the start of Dwayne completely taking over Hollywood. In 2013, his movies alone brought over $1.3 billion. Snitch, Pain and Gain, G.I. Joe Retaliation, and obviously Fast and Furious 6. In 2014, he starred in Hercules, which brought over $250 million. Dwayne even made a slight comeback in WWE with a feud against John Cena. And honestly, what helped Dwayne be so successful was his hard work ethic and the respect that he gave to everyone he worked with. He was one of the best people to work with on set. He took direction well, showed up on time, and did exactly what he was instructed to do. Anyone who's worked with Dwayne only has nice things to say about him, and that goes a much longer way than you think it does. Because at the end of the day, to really get in Hollywood is the connections that you have, and if you're nice to a lot of the people and get them on your good side, that can take you very far. The Rock was on a roll that could not be stopped. The only person that could stop him at this point was himself. And in 2016, we'd start to see that happen. Being in Fast and Furious was the thing that took Dwayne's career to a next level, but also was the very first start in ruining it. Because you see, it was that year where we actually would start to see Dwayne's ego get out of control for the very first time. Dwayne would start a feud with his co-star and Fast and Furious producer, Vin Diesel. Vin starred only in the first film and then came back to star and produce in the fourth Fast and Furious movies. He then continued to star and produce the 5th, 6th, and 7th movie, the ones that Dwayne starred in. And at some point, this clearly got to Dwayne. Because after filming a Fast and Furious 8, Dwayne would go onto Instagram to subliminally diss a lot of his co-stars. My female co-stars are amazing and I love them. My male co-stars, however, are a different story. Some conduct themselves as stand-up men and true professionals while others don't. The ones that don't are too chicken shit to do anything about it, candy asses. He deleted this post pretty quickly after posting it, but it still reached a lot of tabloids and got a lot of people talking. Who exactly was Dwayne dissing over here? Well, inside sources who worked on the movie were able to confirm that Dwayne was talking about Vin Diesel. They were constantly butting heads on set and just didn't get along. But the story was pretty divided in exactly who was doing the aggression here. Some sources say that Dwayne was not very happy with how Vin was running things and would rebel by showing up late or not showing up at all, which was pretty out of his character. But other sources said that Vin was acting like a diva and showing up extremely late to set himself. Some days just spending spending all day in his trailer. Dwayne himself confirmed that they did actually have beef in an interview, and that it was so bad that the two actually could not be on set together at the same time. They would literally have to use body doubles for their shots at some point. It was a giant ego battle between the two, and it was most likely fueled by their career paths after the 5th movie. You see, after Fast and Furious 5, Dwayne became one of the most popular and well-paid actors in all of Hollywood, just like how he planned. But Vin wasn't doing so well. His movies completely flopped in box offices and got absolute shit reviews, meaning that the Fast and Furious series was all that he had. And in interviews, when Vin talked about Dwayne, he was extremely passive-aggressive. He would say only nice things, but would constantly refer to him as his little brother, subtly trying to say that he's still number one. Dwayne was so fed up with this that he quite literally left the Fast and Furious series over it, which again was the best thing that ever happened to his career. But he still was contractually obligated to do one last movie, which was Hobbs and Shaw, a movie that was completely separate from the series as a whole. The movie still did phenomenal in the box office, but really went to show the lengths that Dwayne was willing to go just not to be around Vin. And for the next couple of years, Dwayne still kept his strong streak of box office hits. Baywatch, Central Intelligence, Jumanji, Rampage, Skyscraper. Dwayne never ever did a movie that did less than $100 million in the box office. And he eventually became the 16th highest grossing actor in the entire world, bringing in over $13 billion. He also made a giant splash on social media, becoming nearly the 5th most followed person on the world with over 395 million followers. And a lot of this really came from the persona and the brand that he established as a person. He was the work hard, play hard guy who woke up at 4 in the morning, lifted super heavy weights, ate super healthy, and grinded his ass off. He became an American icon just like how he planned. In a poll where people voted as the biggest American icons, this is what the results said. Number 5 was Martin Luther King Jr. Number 4 was Abraham Lincoln. Number 3, George Washington. Number 2, Elvis. And number 1, Dwayne Johnson. I'm not joking, this is real. He had more appeal than the president who ended slavery and then the guy who ended segregation. Like, that's crazy. And he had such a massive appeal that actually there was a poll that revealed 46% of Americans would support him as president, which he genuinely considered. He was on top of the world, and it started to get to his head pretty badly. It kind of started off with the way that he wanted his public image to be displayed, because around 2019, it was revealed that Dwayne had a specific clause in his contract that would not allow his character to lose any fights. His character cannot lose any sort of battle no matter what the movie is. This most likely started with the Fast and Furious incident, as Vin Diesel had a very similar clause in his contract as well. But it really went to show about just how much Dwayne really cared about preserving this hero image he wanted so badly in all of his movies. His ego is so fragile that he quite literally cannot let himself lose any battles in a fantasy world. And this led to the very noticeable repetition in all of his movies where he basically just played himself over and over again. Take a look at these 4 pictures right here. They all look the same, right? Well, what if I told you that they were all 4 different movies? I'm not fucking kidding here. He became the most predictable actor ever, where he just did a bunch of action stuff with a bunch of explosions and shit. Dwayne was successful, but he wasn't respected. He brought in tons of money to the box office, but it's not like he was gonna win an Oscar. Dwayne was making more money than ever still, but it wasn't enough for him. Around 2020 was when the world first started to see through the fake persona of Dwayne Johnson, and it would start to genuinely crumble. Now in 2020, The Rock decided to become an entrepreneur and create his own tequila brand, Terramana. Now from the get-go, this brand took off immediately. It sold like 600,000 liter cases and was already valued at $3.5 billion. Now there's nothing wrong with having a side business or a tequila brand at all. But the way that Dwayne just constantly promoted this brand all the time, it was very ingenuine and very fake. Because he plugged this drink almost anywhere he could, constantly posting it on his Instagram. He did almost anything possible to plug this. Or like when he did his very first rap verse on the song with Tech 9, which basically was a promotion for the tequila brand. And even then, this clearly wasn't enough because Dwayne would constantly do ads on his Instagram. Now, since Dwayne is the 5th most followed person on Instagram, he charges around $2.4 million per Instagram post. And since he did these so often, it would be like 1 out of every 3rd post on his Instagram that were basically just ads. Now, I'm not gonna hate too much on this because honestly, if I could get that much money for just posting a damn picture, I'd be doing the exact same shit. I'd be ripping that every fucking day. But there were times that Dwayne would just straight up lie in these ads. For example, in 2022, he posted a picture of himself going to In-N-Out claiming that it was his very first time and also boosting himself for giving such a big tip. Even though quite literally 5 years ago, he posted himself going to In-N-Out, and he clearly didn't learn because 1 year later, he did the exact same thing again, posting about how he's going to In-N-Out for the very first time. And in each of these posts where he blatantly lies, he promotes his tequila brand. It was pointed out pretty quickly by fans and even Penguin Zero. It was just extremely unnecessary because why lie about that? Like seriously, he could have just said that he likes going to In-N-Out and felt like getting a burger from there. It didn't need to be this giant relevant lie about going there for the first time and such. Now, this whole thing didn't really have any insane consequences of any kind. The worst it really had was just a Penguin Zero video with over 6 million views. But in 2020, Dwayne would actually have a genuine effect on his career when one of his movies flopped horrendously, and that was the release of the movie Jungle Cruise. This movie was based on the Disney park theme ride of the same name, and it was about this captain who travels with the scientists to find the Tree of Life. The movie had a budget of $200 million and brought in $220 million, which seems good, I guess, but in reality, that was a complete flop. Combining with the production costs and everything else involved with this film, this movie needed to make at least $500 million to break even. Now, this was in 2020, so it probably was because of the whole cough cough situation that didn't allow people to go to theaters, but it wasn't nearly as bad as the bombshell of Black Adam. Now, in 2022, Dwayne was both a producer and the star for the DC comic film Black Adam. The movie infamously did awful in the box office and was a complete shit show, and it's mostly because of Dwayne. Now, in case you don't know, Black Adam is a character that's actually involved with Shazam in the DC comic universe. Now, originally Black Adam was supposed to be a villain in the Shazam movie, but Dwayne did not like the idea of Black Adam only being a supporting character villain in the Shazam movie, and instead urged the company to do his own film. And because Dwayne was the A-list celebrity and putting up the money for some of this project, they said yes. They didn't really have a choice. And the movie had an absolute insane level of promotion for it. The usual commercials, billboards, social media posts. Dwayne Johnson even founded an energy drink Zoa in 2020, and they did like a whole market line of Black Adam and pushed this drink to like every single store to promote this damn movie. There was clearly no dollar being spared to promote this movie by any means possible. And for good reason, because everyone knows that if you land an MCU type of role, you are basically set for life when it comes to the film industry. That is top tier, and it does not get better than that. This was Dwayne's real chance to get taken seriously as an actor to some degree. But there was just one problem. The movie was dog shit, and Dwayne was even shittier. It was just another case of Dwayne playing himself and adding no depth to the character at all. The original Black Adam character from the DC comics was this morally complex anti-hero that really would have made a great film. But once again, Dwayne had to come in and Dwayne it up and completely shat on any potential that this film had. The combined production costs for everything involved in this film totaled around $450 million. However, the film made less than that and barely even scratched $400 million. So it was going to lose $50 to $100 million based on all of the costs. Dwayne cannot even remotely accept the idea of this movie being a failure after all the work he put in and would do anything to change the narrative. He even went so far as to go onto Twitter and posted that he confirmed with financiers that the movie would actually profit $56 to $72 million. Seems legit, right? Well, not even slightly, because it turns out that Dwayne and others on his team fed fake information to Hollywood to exaggerate the numbers and make people believe that it was a success when it wasn't. When looking at the legit numbers, the movie was losing a shit ton of money. So it was no surprise when Dwayne would later reveal that they were not continuing with the character. Dwayne was so desperate to have any type of appeal by any means necessary. He just could not handle the idea that the movie wasn't good and that people didn't like it. The lies would start to spread past just his success and all of its brands, as his entire livelihood was starting to be put into question, because one of the main ones being of his use of steroids. Now, Dwayne is pretty jacked as fuck, not even for someone who is 50 years old, just for someone in general. Dwayne is more than twice my age, but more twice as jacked. And over time, he's just gotten bigger and bigger. And that type of physique to maintain at his age is not even remotely close to easy. So it made lots of people wonder if he was natural or not. Dwayne has constantly denied the fact that he uses steroids and claims that he only did it one time when he was around 18, but since then has remained clean. But many fitness influencers that are very experienced just do not believe that.
Is he telling people? Does he say, I've never taken steroids in my life? Does he say that?
He said in one instance that when he was 18, him and his friends took something and it gave him gynecomastia and then he never touched it again or something like that.
That seems suspect.
Super suspect.
Yeah.
You think The Rock has taken steroids?
Yeah.
Do you think he took
Maybe.
steroids?
He
Wait.
probably took a little bit of something here and there. Not a lot, you know.
And there was really no proof of this until Dwayne broke down what his actual routine is like. And things just did not start to add up. In a video, Dwayne claims that in order to have the physique he has, he needs to eat around 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day.
I was probably at that time ingesting about anywhere between 6 to, well, I would say possible, almost 8,000 calories a day.
The Rock in no way, shape, or form eats on average 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day. If he actually ate those kind of calories, 6,000 to 8,000 a day, he would be 100 pounds overweight. There is no way he eats this much.
Now, assuming Dwayne does extreme intense physical activity every single day, someone of his size and weight does not need to eat that much. Doing the math, he really needs to only eat 4,000 calories every single day. If Dwayne really did eat that much food every day, he would be Dwayne the Boulder Johnson. Greg Doucette, a very respected and experienced fitness influencer, did a 30-minute breakdown of just how none of this shit was adding up.
Imagine if doing something this easy for 20 minutes could develop a physique like The Rock. No, it's not hard rock. No. Faking effort. So remember, The Rock is in fact a gifted actor. He's been in how many movies? Blockbuster movies. He's an actor, and so he doesn't actually have to be suffering to make it look like he's suffering.
Now listen, what you want to put in your body is up to you. The real problem is when you have a platform and people looking up to you and you're not really being transparent about what you're putting in your body. There's already an issue with tons of fitness influencers who definitely take steroids but do not talk about it. And Dwayne clearly does this whole cycle so that he can get that juggernaut muscle to really be in the badass shape for all of his action-packed films. But it's just simply not as true as people think. Because if you really break it down, the math is not mathing. Even small lies he says can be proven wrong, like even if you're not an expert. Like when he said that he drinks 16 liters of water a day, you physically cannot drink that much water. It's physically impossible. You will die doing that. And on top of blatant lies, Dwayne was just becoming more and more desperate for people's approval. He just started becoming this walking, talking billboard that would just say these AI-generated like statements to appeal to everybody. This was wildly apparent when him and Oprah created the People's Fund of Maui in response to all of those wildfires that were happening in Hawaii like last year. This got tons of backlash from fans that it seemed super out of touch since Dwayne was worth $800 million and Oprah was worth $2.5 billion, yet they were asking the people to donate money when they could just do that themselves. And yeah, that would be out of touch, but both Dwayne and Oprah each donated $5 million, so it was a $10 million total donation. Yeah, he was getting a bunch of backlash, but he didn't really need to respond to all this because it would pass over time. He already was doing the thing that people criticized him not doing. And besides, him and Oprah were doing a good thing by promoting this cause. And the idea of people getting mad at him and not liking him was just too much for him to bear, so he posted an entire apology.
I get it, and I completely understand. And I could have been better. And next time I will be better.
Which again was not necessary, but he just couldn't fathom the idea of not being liked even for a short period of time. But it wasn't nearly as bad as his conflicting actions with Joe Rogan. When Joe Rogan initially posted a video talking about how he got COVID and had to postpone his shows, Dwayne left a comment. "Great stuff for your brother, perfectly articulated. Look forward to coming on one day and breaking out the tequila with you." He was seemingly in support of Joe. However, he backtracked this when he got called out on Twitter. "Dear The Rock, you're a hero to many people and using your platform to defend Joe Rogan, a guy that used and laughed about using the N-word dozens of times, is a terrible use of your power. Have you actually listened to this man's many racist statements about black people?" Now, this was in reference to when old clips surfaced of Joe using the N-word and making some pretty racist jokes. Joe did issue an apology about it, which was received well. And this tweet was not worth responding or stressing over, but Dwayne could not deal with the idea of being disliked. So he responded to it and backtracked his support of Joe. "Dear Dr. Winslow, thank you so much for this. I hear you as well as everyone here 100%. I was not aware of his N-word use prior to my comments, but now I've become educated to his complete narrative. Learning moment for me." Yet 1 year later, he made an appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. So taking back his statement of taking back his statement, I guess. And this podcast got extreme backlash, not because of Dwayne's previous statements, but because it was just very fake and inauthentic. Dwayne was basically on maximum people pleaser mode with this because him and Joe were just talking about the most bland topics ever. It might be possible that Dwayne and his team talked to Joe and blacklisted certain topics from being discussed. They didn't talk about him using steroids or his president independent run, which Joe has talked about before on the show. He doesn't ask Dwayne about his political beliefs or his run or any plan of it. If anything, this felt like Dwayne interviewing Joe because Dwayne was doing all the questions. Joe did most of the fucking talking on his own podcasts, and when actual topics are brought up, Dwayne does not give any actual opinion on it. For example, they talk about the Israel and Palestine situation, which was a very serious issue. Joe was not afraid to give his raw 2 cents of the entire matter, but when Dwayne talks about it, he just kind of blindly agrees with it and doesn't give any actual substance to the conversation.
I have friends who support Trump. I have friends who support Biden. I have friends.
Do you really have friends who support Biden?
I do.
Come
well,
on.
No. Here's what I do. I have friends. Thank you. That's a good check because that's important. This is important context.
They support the Democratic Party.
I have friends who are loyal to the party.
Yes.
This clip is also weird because Dwayne did support Joe back in 2020, which was like the closest he ever did to picking a side. So again, Dwayne is just doing whatever it possibly takes to appeal to as much people as possible and kind of just blindly put on this mask to really be as generic as possible. And this is not a good thing for Dwayne if he does want to run for president, because you can't be a people pleaser and win the election. Running for president will require being controversial a lot of the time and being hated by a lot of the people. If he can't handle a few mean tweets about him, then he definitely cannot handle a presidential campaign. And the controversy continued when Dwayne fought against Roman Reigns on WrestleMania SmackDown. People were pissed because they wanted to see Roman fight against Cody Rhodes, but Cody stepped out so that Dwayne could fight against Roman. Fans did not like this at all, and their segment on YouTube is the most disliked WrestleMania video ever. And it would be this year that Dwayne experienced his worst box office flop yet with Red One. Now, just looking by the poster, I don't think I need to tell you what this movie is about at all, because you already know. It's another star-studded Christmas film filled with action-packed sequences and basically completely dependent on the celebrity appeal to bring in the box office bucks. It's your usual predictable Dwayne movie with generic plots, and it failed completely. The movie had a $250 million budget, but opening weekend made only around $32 million. As of December 1st, this movie hasn't even made $150 million. It's gonna take a Christmas miracle for this movie to even break even. And what made it even worse was when Dwayne did this completely cringy interview talking about how he got the inspiration from Oppenheimer.
The Rock says Oppenheimer inspired him to film Red One for IMAX. It can be game over. With Red One, our intention was to make a movie that you can enjoy on the biggest screen possible. Legitimately, the biggest screens possible, well, they're IMAX. I was midway through shooting Red One. I had an opportunity to go watch Oppenheimer, and I watched it in the IMAX theater where Christopher Nolan watches and screens his movies, him and Emma, his wife. I even asked, let me sit where Chris is sitting. So they said Chris sits here to enjoy the movie. So I sat where Chris sat. I watched Oppenheimer. It was amazing. But I was thinking, holy shit, this thing, Red One on this screen with this technology can be game over. I remember texting Jake, and I sent him a picture first of my bare chest, and then I sent him a picture of the screen. We just had a great conversation afterwards about just how cool it's going to be. It's going to be very cool. It's just cringe. Bottom line is, it's just embarrassing.
Dwayne seeing the Oppenheimer movie and going so far as to sit next to Christopher Nolan and basically getting the inspiration for his own movie really shows the length of his ego and his arrogance, because he's like trying to compare himself to Christopher Nolan, a much more respectable and established director. The constant spew of lies, inauthenticity, and bland movies has finally caught up to The Rock. He's no longer able to Dwayne up his movies anymore to make them appealing. Now, is Dwayne a bad person? Definitely not. I actually argue the opposite. He has an extensive list of charity and philanthropy work. But at the end of the day, you don't really need a big scandal or a RICO case to ruin your career. Being inauthentic is the quickest path to your downfall above anything.